Ladies, I am so excited to be talking to all of you. I am a fan of each of you, and I want to get right into it. And Nina, I want to start with you because I want to know from your perspective, what is the thing that makes something worth being an adaptation, whether it's to film, to TV? What is that thing in your mind that's like, we need to do this? And I will hand off a mic to her.
I mean, I don't know that it's ever any just one thing, but for me, actually, I'll quote a book I just read recently. It's sort of a book that sets your heart on fire, would be a way I would describe it, or that you pick it up, you cannot put it down, you can't let go of it, you don't want to leave it. Anybody who interrupts you, you wish that they would go away. And when you put it down, it stays with you. And it leaves a mark. And it doesn't happen very often. It's a feeling. It happens when a book just, or a play, or it just takes you by storm. And, for me, often that comes down to, is there something I want? And is there something I fear? And if I have a strong sense of both of those things throughout, you usually have me pretty good. And then from there, it becomes, a larger question of, like, does it deserve space in the universe? Is it worthy of a communal viewing? Is it better seen in what format? Is it long form? Is it short form? But it starts with, I would say, the heart on fire.
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me if I just say it with my chest? Yes. Amazing. That way I don't have to take their mic from them. I will just project into the crowd. Well, Lucy, I want to ask you, once it's decided upon that it's going to be adapted and we're going to do this, and maybe it's something that is beloved, it sets fans' hearts on fire, what is it that then you need me on? Oh, they need me on a mic. I was doing my best, you guys. I was really, really putting the bass in my voice. Lucy, I'll come back to you. Once it's decided upon that something is going to be adapted, that something is beloved, how do you then kind of toe the line between what people are going to expect of it and what actually works for the story, right? Because every fan feels like they have ownership because they love this property so much. So they're going to want to see certain things that maybe just don't work for the medium. So how do you toe that line?
I agree with everything that she said, and another thing that as I get older I think about, which is, am I going to love it still in 5 years or 10 years when I'm still trying to get it made? So, because
takes a long time to get things made.
It takes a long time to get things made. So I think the fans are one thing that you're thinking about, and another thing you're thinking about, depending on how popular the book is. Sometimes we do books that aren't as well known. We've done 2 autobiographies. That was a little bit scary. One was Jarhead and one was Girl Interrupted, and both of the authors liked the movies, which was interesting. If they're a dead author, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's one of the best books ever written, you'd have your heart in your hand the whole time and say, if I live up to any of it, I'll be doing great. And then there's some books that literally, I worked on a book that Tom Wolfe had written, and I'm not going to say the name of it, but I thought it was a terrible idea for a movie. And
Honesty, we love it.
I unfortunately turned out to be, I had passed on it, but my studio I worked for bought it. Anyway, at the end of it, he wanted to show a screening of it in his in Southampton where he lived. And I said, Tom, I shouldn't be saying this as a studio executive, but you might want to double think whether or not you want to invite your friends to see this movie. Because it's not, I don't think it's what you wanted. This is like, I'm probably going to get fired for saying this. And he said, hey, Tom Wolfe, one of the coolest guys in the world, hey, when you sell your house, you don't get to drive by and say, I don't like the curtains. Wow. So I give you that. In terms of the fans, you better please them, but you'll never please all of them. I would say we did have death threats on our author on Divergent for the last book in which she killed off the heroine, and fans said they wanted to kill her, quite a few fans.
Fans are famously very chill. Ariana, I want to come to you because as we talk about where things fit and what kind of format they fit in, right? Whether things go to movie or television to stage, you just made your Broadway debut in Chicago. Give it up for Ariana.
Thank you.
I'm really curious, when you're doing your prep work, first and foremost, did you go and look at the movie, or did you look at like stage productions? Did you do both? What was kind of your approach?
Well, the movie came out when I was in high school, college, and I was definitely a huge fan of it. I mean, I think we all, incredible movie. And I had seen the stage production, and then throughout the process of getting ready to debut, I was watching this old black and white film called Roxy Hart, starring Ginger Rogers, that came out in 1942. That's not a musical, but some of the lines are exactly the same. It's quite interesting. But that was something I was taking from all of those things, but at the same time being very careful as to not take on too many of those things, because I think that what makes it work when you take on a role like that has been done, that is ever evolving, is that you bring yourself to it and your own humanity to it and where you are in your life, because otherwise it feels like you're just trying to fill someone else's shoes.
How did you find how much of yourself you wanted to bring to it, right? Because there's a level of like comfort that you have to have, and it's terrifying, I'm sure, to take on a role portrayed by such incredible actresses that have played it. So how did you kind of find that line of like what you wanted your Roxy Hart to be? Oh, dropped a bottle.
Well, that was something that was in the rehearsal process, reiterated to me over and over, is that as initially when I was learning the show, before I had been on stage doing it in front of anybody, was that it was important for me throughout the rehearsal process to find my Roxy and who my Roxy is. And as time went on, yes, in the very beginning, I think you're very concerned about doing it right and making sure you're hitting everything and doing it the best. And then as time goes on, you really find yourself morphing into this person, and you want to take good care of this character that you fall in love with, really, and she can be quite the villain. But it was important to me to make sure that she didn't fall too much into those traps. And so for me, it was about the humanity. It was about her connection to the other people on stage and her desire to survive throughout the entire show. And I think that's something that her and I have in common, is a determination to survive and to succeed.
I love it. Winnie, I want to come to you because, guys, Winnie is responsible. She's the screenwriter and also the book writer of something you might have heard of recently. It's called Wicked. Very small film, not doing much at all. Yeah, a little indie film. You maybe haven't heard of it yet. I would recommend it. But obviously, with the film, you are adapting your own work because you worked on the actual musical, like the stage production as well. I just want to know every step and every challenge of that. I know that's so broad, but like when you are adapting your own work, how do you then have the objectivity to say, okay, this isn't going to work. We need to cut this. Like, how do you find what it is for the screen?
Thanks. Well, first of all, that was my job. I try to do a good job. I work really hard at those kind of ideas. I mean, I don't think there's a perfect way to approach it, as everyone has said. And I loved what everyone said. I loved what Ariana said about bringing yourself where you are in your life and who are you right now, and what is happening in your own consciousness right now. The person who wrote the movie with my collaborators is not the same person who back before the towers fell, in the late 90s, was very first approaching the musical, and it's not the same world, and I'm just not the same. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it was just truly, I just kept saying to myself, we all got excited, about the idea, what could a movie be? What could the movie be? And so we really wanted to open our minds, not close them. Not be all about, well, this is what worked in the past, or this is what we always do. It was, we were talking about John Chu before. John Chu was always sort of pulling us back, going, well, maybe you should do it like you do it on stage, because I was letting myself really imagine other things, and some of them are in the movie, and some of them are not. So it was just a question of opening my mind, which, is what I'm doing all the time as a writer. Opening my mind, opening my heart, just trying not to be closed-minded or holding on to the first idea. Sometimes the first idea is a great idea. Sometimes the 10th idea is the idea you needed. So,
thank you. And Winnie, I want to stick with you because, and I know it's hard. I keep going back to like, what's the one thing? And I know it's hard to narrow it down in that sense. But when you are adapting something like Wicked, which is a beloved book and a beloved stage production, is there one thing that like your guiding light, your North Star, that's like, if we do nothing else right, if we do nothing else in this adaptation, we need to do this one thing to keep us on track?
yeah. I think the North Star for us and for me in my whole career has been love. Nina said it really beautifully, but it's also about inspiration. What inspires me? What makes me mad? What am I scared of? You were saying that idea of what am I scared of? What do I wish, excuse me, that I could see on stage? Oh, the water's so far away. It's all the way down there. I'll never get it now. It's all the way down there. Oh, thank you so much. How did you know? So yeah, it's like, it's all about asking myself. The North Star has to be within for me and with my collaborators. Because, Stephen and I would often say to each other, what's the point of making a movie if we aren't really excited and proud about what we did? What would be the point of that? And nobody can ever predict how something's going to come out. That's part of the fun and the terror and the mystery of what we all do. But you can say to yourself, I am going to stay true to what I think is beautiful, to what I think is sexy, to what I think is funny. I am just going to stay true to myself. And it's really what you were saying, Ariana. It's really allowing yourself to shine through, because I think that's what audiences want and respond to, is that level of care and commitment and honesty.
Well, and on that note, Ariana, I'll come back to you because obviously we talked about, in producers creating these things, there's what fans want, there's the desire for everything, there's a pressure, right? I'm curious for you, when you are bringing yourself to this and you are did you take words of advice from anyone, or do you have to tune people out entirely? Because obviously there's always collaborators, people always have opinions, go figure.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between collaboration and comparison. So, as they all say, comparison is the thief of joy. And if you were to try to compare your portrayal of a character, a beloved character, to anyone else's portrayal of that character, you're going to end up getting all inside of yourself and beating yourself down and thinking, oh, well, I'm never going to be like her. She's a better dancer than me, or she's got this that I don't have. But when it comes to collaboration, that's where I think that we connect with each other and we bring each other's ideas higher and higher and higher, and then we end up with something that we all just really love. We're having a great time doing it, and we all ultimately connect with even more.
I love it. Lucy, I want to come to you because you mentioned some of the titles that you've worked on previously. You had the Divergent series, and then, like you said, you had Gatsby. You also did Bewitched, if memory serves correctly. You worked on that one. Some of those are really classic titles, and they go way far back, and then Divergent is more of a modern story. Is there really any kind of difference in process when you are adapting modern titles versus more classic titles?
I just think it's a different kind of pressure because classic titles might be something that somebody's read 5 or 10 times, and modern titles like Divergent or Hunger Games, the fans are rabid. I mean, they just are. And we just did Gladiator, and we had Gladiator I to compare ourselves to.
Yes.
So, thank you. That was scary to try to to walk in the shadow of that and not disappoint. So you do want to do what everyone's saying, which is figure out what the DNA and the heart and soul is of the thing that you're working on, and what drew you to it in the first place, and never lose sight of it with all the other things on a production. There's so many things that can get in your way of obstacles and mishaps or serendipity, great things, or whatever it is. It's never the day that you thought it's going to be. And just trying to keep track of what the North Star, you called it, or the compass, or the DNA, whatever is the heart of what you're working on, so you're not distracted by the fact that it's a perfectly good example is in Gatsby. One of the big scenes in the book, and very beloved and memorable, is that when he meets Daisy, he's been dreaming about her for so many years, and now he's going to meet her. And we traveled 2 hours from, we had rebuilt with CGI 1920s New York and Sydney. None of it was real, by the way. But
What?
yeah. Anyway, so we drive 2 hours to the mountains to where we have this beautiful cottage, and it's all art directed beautifully by Catherine Martin, and it's pouring rain, and it's supposed to be a beautiful sunny day when he arrives with all of his gifts and flowers and is romantic, and it was pouring rain so much that we had to actually drive home and leave. And then we came back again the next week, and it was pouring rain again. And so we said, well, we'll just make it work in the rain. So there's always things that, and it's actually incredibly memorable because Leo is Leo, and he's now drenched. Now he looks on the outside how he feels in the inside, which wasn't part of the book, and it wasn't part of the script, and it was only because we couldn't change the elements, and we left several trucks sitting in mud that may still be there for all I know. But it's how you adapt. I think you said it, something about pivoting. It's how you take what's happening in real life, or where the story told you to go, or where you fell down because the story doesn't hold up in the other medium, or whatever it is, and how you figure out how to adapt that. That's one of the great challenges. And I just want to build on something that you said too, which is the collaboration. One of the greatest things about the medium that we work in is that sense of collaboration. And for me as a producer, one of my greatest thrills is when I'm on the set or even in a writer's room or wherever it is, and I just think, oh, in a million years I could have never thought of that. Bravo. And you're working on something that's bigger than any one person, and it needs everybody's ideas and everybody pulling and everybody pushing and all that stuff. And for me, that's one of in terms of the making of, which is very demanding some days, and some days disappointing, and some days thrilling. That's the human touch of seeing how something can evolve because of everybody's contribution. It is my favorite part.
I'm glad that you mentioned Gladiator II, because I want to circle right on back to that one, because the thing with Gladiator II is you have to then continue this story. No pressure. People loved Gladiator. It's a beloved film. So when you're figuring out how to continue that, for you guys, where did you start? Where do you even start of like, okay, where do we go next?
Well, I didn't produce the first one. I was the vice chairman of Sony at the time. My husband produced it, who's now I joined his company, and we have a partnership. They killed off the two leads. Part of why it took 25 years is if you want to do a sequel, don't kill off the two leads. And two of the other main leads died natural deaths, one during the shooting of the first Gladiator. Oliver Reed and the other one, Richard Harris, were both dead, so that was a stumbling block. And Russell wanted to be in it, and his agent called Doug right after the first movie and said, I have a good idea. How about they carry his body out of the arena, and then they all high-five each other and say, hey, it worked. So we took a few wrong turns. I say the long and short, we had to wait for Paul Mescal to be born.
Well, Nina, I want to come to you because obviously you worked on several adaptations, several different titles. I'm really interested just in the process of it getting made. How competitive does it get to because I imagine when you have major titles, there's going to be a lot of companies that want to produce or create the adaptation. How competitive does it actually get, as much as you can really kind of get into it? Can we pass her a mic? Oh, yeah.
Actually, in retrospect, our biggest successes were all kind of counterintuitive for the most part. And so Hunger Games was in bookstores, published. The first book was published. It had a loyal following, but it was not a household name. And Diary of a Wimpy Kid also was in bookstores. And with Crazy Rich Asians, it had just been published when we optioned it, but in that case, we knew that in a traditional studio system, that movie is not going to get programmed. We're just not going to get a slot. And so the author, Kevin Kwan, sort of took a leap of faith with us, optioned it to us for $1. We financed the script with equity money outside of the system. And then with our script, we were able to get John Chu. And John, who I had known from my Disney days and doing Step Up together, he had incredible vision for the film. And so we budgeted, we scouted, and then we came to the marketplace with, this is the movie we want to make at $30 million and just see how many people would want it. And by the way, most people didn't want it. So it wasn't but we had, 2 places that really wanted it. And it came down to, Warner Brothers and a theatrical release, or Netflix and a boatload of money. And we all felt, we felt that the theatrical release, again, it kind of comes down to, I think, when you talk about why you do something or what the North Star is, it's often the feeling that you had when you watched the musical or the play, or when you read the book, or when you watched the first movie, or the way the character struck you. And it's the feeling that you had that you're sort of trying to protect and hold on to, so that even though the thing will change, it won't be just like the book, but it should feel like the book. Yes. And so in the case of, and for us, certainly the feeling of that book was of, it was meant in our hearts and minds to be this communal experience. The feeling of it was meant to be this romance, but featuring people who you've never gotten to see their story told, but what they're experiencing is what we all experience when you bring the wrong person home and they're not good enough for your family. And so the feeling of the book, which was that in its specificity, it found universality, was the feeling we also, are chasing in the movie, or the feeling of reading The Hunger Games and knowing that the person who's created the original thing has pulled off, in something amazing. They've pulled off a high wire act that is really delicate. How did they do it? How did they manage to make you feel that way? And so then you're trying to see if you can conjure that, but with a different medium and with new people, but still find that one kind of very elusive thing, which is the way that it made you feel in the first place.
That's so good.
Pardon my reach. I hate doing that to you, but
It's like a talking stick.
it is. It is now my turn to talk. Well, I'm glad that you keep coming back to the Hunger Games, because there's something really interesting happening with the Hunger Games. Is there is now another one on the way. I believe you are signed on to produce that next one. But you are, yes, please. We love the Hunger Games. But you're going to be adapting something that at present, I believe, has not been written yet, or it's at least it's been read by other people. Correct. Okay. Yes, it's been written. No, there's Flying Blind, actually.
It's been written and it'll be published in March. Yeah, it's been written and it'll be published in March. And so, Suzanne Collins, is somebody who, when she has something to say, she'll write a book. And so you never really know when you're going to get a book. I mean, with the original trilogy, it was a trilogy, so you knew you'd get 3. But this last one, I did not know I would be getting. I hoped that we would get one, but we did not know for sure. But she has some, always, I think, really powerful thematic ideas rooted in unforgettable characters. And so and the timeliness of her ideas and the things that she's exploring. It never sort of stops amazing me how much she can sort of speak to the generation that she writes in and for, and of our generation, and what we all sort of both share and fear as a culture.
So if it hasn't been seen by other people, has it been seen by you? Can you tease things? What can you just tell us the entire plot, please? It's just you and me and our lovely ladies up here. Don't worry about that. They're not here. What can you tease anything at all?
I can only say what has been said, which is that it is, it's the 50th quarter, it's the 50th games, the second quarter quell, which is Haymitch's games. And that's how much I can say so far. But it's very exciting. We're well into it. We're working on it. We're actually writing's happening, meetings happening, like script is well on its way, and a movie will get made, and we're on our way.
I tried, you guys. I tried for the spoilers. I knew I wasn't getting it much. Winnie, let's talk about Wicked again, because it's just the biggest thing right now, and it's so exciting. And you get to do this in 2 parts. It's Wicked Part 1 that's out right now, and the film that's out it's just shy of the runtime of the entire Broadway show. So I'm curious for you, when you are, doing the screenplay for this, how much freedom do you now have when it's like we have a whole nother movie that we can get into and cover things?
Well, that was our reason. That truly was our reason for wanting to make it 2 movies. And it didn't start out to be 2 movies when long ago, when I first started writing the screenplay for Wicked, it was going to be 1 movie, which, made a lot of sense to us at the time. But what we started to realize was we wanted very much not to cut any songs because of fans, and people are nodding, but also because we love those songs. Could call us crazy. So we didn't want to cut. In fact, Stephen wanted to write more songs. And we wanted to go into more depth at times and add to the experience and give more, because that was part of the fun for us of making it into a movie. Like, what could we give? There were things that we had thought of when we were making the musical originally that really you couldn't do on stage. Wow, this is our moment. So when we started to add all this up, the songs not being cut, wanting to go into more depth, and if you've seen the show, I love the show, of course, like a child, but we go lickety-split in that show. We go really fast in a lot of moments. We're just like really talking fast. And things go by in a flash. And for instance, if things like the Grimmery, we wanted to be able to explore that a little more. The animal story, just the 2 women themselves. So the childhood, could we see a glimpse of her childhood? All of that takes so much real estate. I learned that word from my daughter, who's also a writer. So it's like, yeah, because I would never have said real estate before, but now everybody's saying it, I guess. So it takes so much real estate, and we started to come to an organic understanding, and that may be an overused word, but it really was about the story. Hey, if we split it into 2, we'd have room for everything we wanted. And that was an amazing freedom that I have to credit Universal. Again, this was really powered by us wanting to have all the things we wanted to include and not have to feel rushed. And it feels good. You never know how anything is going to be. I think everyone's made that clear. And you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and go, you know what, I stayed true to myself, and I do believe in this. You want to feel that inner motivation that I was putting this out there in a good faith way, that I believe in this. And that's what I can say. You know, whatever ends up happening in terms of it being 2, I think we can all say that our whole creative team felt like this was the right decision. It felt good, and I think it gave a lot of good things to the audience. Hopefully,
Actually, I would say that it's a great reflection of that you've come to it. When you talk about the fans, if you're adapting it, you are the number one fan. You are the person. Nobody is a bigger geek about the things about it that you love. And so you come to it as a fan, and what you gave in that movie was what, as a fan, you wanted.
Right.
And so you feel so wildly satisfied at the end of that movie, so complete at the end of the first movie. You're desperate for another one, but you operate it like it's the same thing of it coming from you. It came from you as a fan. And so the fans aren't like this. There are crazy fans, but they're not outside of us. Like,
no, you're right.
You
They're us, and I did. That's why I used the word love before, because what is a fan but someone who's fallen in love with something and wants and feels that it's speaking to them in a very personal way. And of course, that's where it all started with Stephen and I, and that idea of that you don't know the true story of the Wicked Witch. You think she's a Wicked Witch. You don't know what actually happened. There's so much more under the surface. There's so much more that you're not seeing, that you haven't seen because you're only looking at the surface. That whole idea, you know, still actually gives me chills. You know, we fell in love with that idea.
Well, guys, we are getting very close to our time here. So before we go, I just want to speed run down the line. I am very interested to know, because you have all been involved in such just incredible projects, is there an adaptation that has not happened yet that, like, if it were in your wildest dreams going to be adapted, you would want to be a part of? What would it be?
I have a good answer. I'll try not to talk too long, but there's a book called A Book of American Martyrs by Joyce Carol Oates, and my daughter and I were hired during the pandemic right before the pandemic, by Nina Tassler and Denise DeNovi to turn it into a limited series. And ultimately Showtime optioned it, but then decided not to make it a limited at all. And I still believe it could be an indie film. We would adapt our own adaptation, and I just think it's all about the subject of violence in America. It's about the killing of an abortion doctor, but from a very personal view, from the daughters of the killer and the daughter of the person who was killed. It's an incredible story, American story, and you can see, I guess, that I'm passionate about it. So that's mine.
I have actually probably a few, because I read far more things than I'm able to adapt. But I would have to say that right now I'm completely obsessed with the Red Rising series, and cannot stop thinking about it and coveting it for myself.
I have a lot that I worked on that never happened. I would say I just reread some of The Pale Blue Dot, the Carl Sagan book. I worked on Contact for many, many years with George Miller before it turned into a Bob Zemeckis movie, and we got to work with Carl Sagan, and we got to meet with futurologists and some of the greatest minds ever. It was one of my thrilling experiences. The producer was getting to be in a room with all the people that we were in for several years. He later left the project because he said I had told him he had to have it ready by the millennium, and that wasn't in his contract. But anyway, I read that recently again. I reread it again, and I thought it had such a beautiful perspective on the times that we live in. I have no idea how I would ever adapt it. But anyway, it's a great piece.
A musical, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Have you read it? It's beautiful.
I have not read it, and I haven't read the books that you mentioned, so now I have interesting books.
Okay. This is called packaging.
Okay, Love Island the musical. No, I'm just kidding. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is a book that when I read it, I felt like it was so incredibly visual and colorful. And I am a bisexual woman. This is me coming out. No, I'm just kidding. But reading her story and having that representation in the book, I thought was so beautiful, and I can just physically see it. So, and I think I've heard that maybe this is already happening, but it hasn't happened yet, so it still counts.
So call Ariana. She's ready to go.
I am available.
And on that note, guys, that is our time. Ladies, thank you so much. Give it up for every one of these extraordinary women. We have Winnie Holzman, Nina Jacobson, Lucy Fisher, Ariana Madix. Guys, thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.